Sonic, the heart of your system.
I'm Leo Warder for KitGuru. This is the final Leo Says of 2019, and indeed the final Leo Says of the decade. Added to that, we've got CES coming up in a couple of weeks' time, so yo ho ho, Merry Christmas, and let's talk tech. My initial notes on a wrap-up of 2019 pretty much boiled down to AMD doing well, Intel doing badly. I know that's in terms of products rather than financially, but let's put that to one side. That would have got rather tedious because you've heard it many times before, both here at KitGuru and on other channels. So I had a quick word with the various other members of the KitGuru team just to get some pointers from them about what they thought was significant in 2019. So I'm going to rattle through their thoughts first and I'll get back to my own bits and pieces. Let's start with Dominic. Dominic is hugely appreciative of the fact that AMD is back in the graphics game. After many refreshes of Polaris, we've now got Navi. So RX 5700 XT in particular, which as we know is the first graphics chip to use 7nm and also is on PCI Express 4, and you can get a graphics card for less than £400. If you shop around, you can get a 5700 non-XT for closer to £300. Perfectly decent graphics cards, not massively exciting in truth, but they're there and they're batting in the mid-range, and that's important. Really ultra high-end 4K gaming is always good fun, but when all said and done, the mid-range and the low-end, that's the bread and butter of the graphics industry. It has been for years, will continue to be. So AMD is back in the graphics game, and we have to hope to goodness that we see a big Navi soon, whether that's an RX 5800 or 5900 or whatever. The tragedy here is we've had this expectation of Big Navi for some while, and yet the rumours about an actual graphics chip pretty much non-existent. Small Navi and really small Navi, sure. So fingers crossed on that front. AMD has proven what it can do, and it competes with Intel in the CPU market. We want something similar in the graphics market. Funny enough, going through the various other notes, Nvidia doesn't get a mention. I mean, they are just dominating the graphics market at the moment, some massive percentage. They've increased their market share of the gaming graphics this year. AMD is able to kind of fight back and say, if you look at total numbers, they're doing incredibly well because, of course, every games console is AMD. So you do have to pick and choose your facts and figures carefully. But Nvidia is doing amazingly well. They're coasting on, and they've got nothing new, frankly, on the horizon. They don't need to. They are selling everything they can make. They revise things with super graphics chips, and they continue to sell truckloads of GPUs. James Morris was very pleased with the Netgear AX12, which is Wi-Fi 6. He actually saw that before we saw Wi-Fi 6 at IFA in Berlin. So Wi-Fi 6 has been sloshing around for about 6 months. It's certainly not mainstream at the moment. It's also horribly expensive. You're essentially paying double for Wi-Fi 6 over Wi-Fi 5. The fact that the industry is moving to the naming of Wi-Fi 6 rather than 802.11n, AC, AX or whatever, that's good. We're going to have different flavors of Wi-Fi 6, that's for sure, but the principle of super fast Wi-Fi that is faster than cabled connection, supports multiple devices, this is all really good news. We just need the pricing to become more sensible, which will inevitably happen over time. So 2019 is the introduction of Wi-Fi 6. 2020 and going forward, we're going to see Wi-Fi 6 becoming more ubiquitous. I don't know how quickly that's going to happen. I'm hoping it'll be in 2020. Fingers crossed. Wi-Fi tends to take a while to sort itself out, but faster is always better. James Dawson, our cooling and news chap, was very impressed by some coolers he saw from Deepcool. The Assassin 3 actually outperformed Noctua's D15, which is truly impressive because, after all, Noctua and the D15, that's the benchmark of big coolers that can cool just anything. So the fact that other companies are competing with Noctua, big thumbs up to Deepcool there. Also, their Deepcool's AIOs, they're quite interesting. They're not just yet another Ace Tech cooler. They have their own technology going on inside. So well done to Deepcool. And then we have Simon Crisp, storage. So PCI Express Gen4, which obviously arrived with AMD X570 and also the new Threadripper platform. That's good, and as a result we've seen PCI Express Gen4 SSDs. They are super fast. The thing here is, for the mainstream user, including myself, PCI Express Gen 4 SSDs are faster than I need. Once you get beyond a certain point, any faster, you don't notice it. On the other hand, some professional workloads, and particularly in the likes of scientific studies, when you've got just massive data streams coming out, they cannot have fast enough storage. Such a thing does not exist. So Gen 4 at the moment seems a bit theoretical to me, but it does have its practical applications. So that's a good thing. In terms of communication, both Simon and Luke said that 2.5 and 5 gigabit Ethernet on motherboards becoming more of a thing. That's good. Gigabit Ethernet is a bit of a limitation for some people, particularly when they're connecting to very fast NAS setups. Again, for most of us, if you're using your Ethernet to connect to broadband, gigabit's fast enough. Beyond gigabit you don't need, but there are people who want faster. The fact it's out there and it's not particularly expensive, very good news. Simon is also very pleased about the 3D NAND increasing in the number of layers. 96 layer NAND is now a thing. Next year we're going to see 128 layer. There's also the whole TLC QLC thing going on. But right now you can go out and buy yourself an M.2 SSD with a single chip that's a terabyte and it will cost you £100. You can also buy a 2 terabyte M.2 SSD for £200. Now that's impressive going. The thing I want to see is SSDs that go beyond 4 terabytes, because that's a really expensive SSD at the moment, even in 2.5-inch form factor. I want 8 terabyte SSDs and then 16 terabyte, because it's the power of 2 thing. And that needs to be at sensible prices. We've been hoping for this now for some years, 3-4 years. We're finally getting there with the 1 terabyte and the 2 terabyte. I mean, those prices are now much cheaper than they used to be. You can still pay more for sort of premium Samsung and such like. But the idea of 2 terabyte for £200, okie dokie, now give me 4 terabytes for £250, £300 for argument's sake. And then after that, we need to push through to new capacities in those form factors. You can't, as far as I'm aware, currently get an 8 terabyte SSD for less than eye-watering money. They're enterprise devices. So that's the next thing we need. We want 4 terabyte at sensible money, and then we want bigger than 4 terabyte, and then the world will be changing in terms of storage. Our CPU chap Luke Hill basically says that AMD has crushed the CPU market, and then he broke it down to specific CPUs, which is more of the same. So his best overall CPU of the year, Ryzen 5 3600. I agree, I bought one myself. Ryzen 7 3700X is what he terms well balanced. Ryzen 9 3900X is good value. After all, that's a 12-core processor for sensible money, about £500. And then you've got the Ryzen 9 3950X, which is the 16-core for £750. That's truly impressive. The idea you've now got 16 cores in essentially the same package size as a Core i9 9900K, that is truly remarkable. And the fact it cools perfectly well and so on, impressive work. AM4 is a good platform. And then on top of that, of course, Threadripper 3000, 24 or 32 cores with 64 cores coming. Big question mark is whether AMD is actually going to show us 64 core at CES or not. I wouldn't be shocked if they don't, purely from the point of view of supply. I'm sure if they could supply the processors now at something like sane money, they would. But just as a kicking Intel while they're down thing, I mean, it'd be quite sweet. On the other hand, they can hold off to Computex of 2020 because Intel is not coming back between now and next June. That's just sick. They cannot possibly do anything to compete with Threadripper 3000 in the next 6 months. So why lay down your big heavy hitting card when you know you can keep it in reserve? That's the way I see it anyway. So I agree with Luke. Ryzen 3000, Threadripper 3000, yep, AMD's had a damn fine year. And as I move on to my own thoughts about 2019, it's another costume change because I've literally just had delivery of my brand new t-shirts. I'm actually impressed to receive new shirts on the 23rd of December that I ordered on the, I think, 20th or 19th or 20th. Deeply impressive, so well done Teespring. So what do I think about 2019? I'll make a comment about the new Apple Mac Pro because everybody has on every tech channel, which is that it can be spec'd up to $50,000 US, albeit half of that price is the memory. That's if you got to 1.5 terabytes of system memory. This is the new Mac Pro, cheese grater front, 28-core Intel processor, loads of memory, loads of storage, AMD graphics with 8GB of memory, all sorts of good stuff coming soon. The point obviously about the new Mac Pro is it's a professional machine. It's in the name. You buy it because you make money from your Mac Pro. You want to work faster, get out those 8K video files and 3D renders and whatever else it is you do, and therefore you buy the new machine. To me, the thought is, when will Mac Pro go Threadripper? That's right now my only thought on the subject. Beyond that, if you want to spend a fortune on it, good luck to you. If you want to go beyond 4K displays, I think they're 6K, and it's like £5,000 per screen, again, go for it. You can moan all you like about the cost of the wheels for the chassis or the monitor stands or whatever. It doesn't matter. You don't have to spend 50 grand on your new Mac Pro if you don't want to. The fact it's far and away the most expensive, in inverted commas, PC that I've ever heard of. Good luck to Apple. They've pushed the boundaries. I wonder if this will be the most expensive PC that is ever sold. I mean, I'm saying PC, computer. Because I wonder what will happen after this. I think this sort of feels like peak computer. Interesting chassis, Intel processor, AMD graphics, huge price tag. I have no problem with it whatsoever. We have the winners and losers of 2019. In graphics, Nvidia is the winner without a shadow of a doubt. They've got certain problems, that's for sure. I mean, their ray tracing, for example, and I speak as a guy who bought two RTX 2080s for review purposes, ray tracing simply does not, as far as I'm concerned, work at all. Whether it will work in the next iteration when they increase the number of ray tracing cores or the one after that, I've got no idea. Right now, RTX 2080 ray tracing, forget about it. On the other hand, Nvidia is selling loads of graphics cards, making loads of money, but it's not like the days of mining when they were making absolute fortunes. So Nvidia's doing very nicely, but they're not doing as nicely as they used to do. By contrast, in the graphics market, AMD is kind of there, but we need the next Navi, and we need Big Navi for them to start competing with Nvidia. So Nvidia, in a way, has had a quiet year, and they've done very nicely for themselves. AMD has had a brilliant 2019, but then they had a really good 2018. 2017 wasn't bad, and of course this is a twofold thing. Their CPU designs have moved forward. TSMC's fabrication processes help them hugely, and in addition, Intel is just stagnant. We know this, the 10 nanometer thing, we are totally familiar with this. AMD never thought they'd be in this situation. They thought their current stuff would be competing with it's now Intel's future stuff, because Intel has lagged. So AMD has moved forward dramatically. Intel has just stayed stuck in 2016. Call it 2016 if you like. So Intel has creaked from quad core to 6 core to 8 core to apparently in the nearish future we understand Comet Lake Desktop might be 10 core. Who knows? And I must confess I'm not particularly fussed about that. We'll see it when it happens. And meanwhile, AMD has just leapt forward for some... In the past we had Bulldozer and there's some fairly horrible CPU designs, and we've now got Zen and Zen 2, and the Ryzen 3000 processors are absolutely amazing, and the X570 platform is superb. The new Threadrippers are brilliant, even though, as you know, I bought a Threadripper 2000 because it's discounted rather than Threadripper 3000, which costs a hefty premium. That's all fine. So AMD's development people and TSMC and also Global Foundries, because they make the IO die, between them they've done really good work. Intel, by contrast, their engineers have had a lousy time of it. Intel hasn't given any details about the problems, so I'm just going to say 10 nanometer. The fact they're claiming the graphics and Ice Lake and so on are wonderful and whatever, it's like, okay, if you say so. Here's the thing. Here's my controversial thought. I would say that while the engineers of AMD have done brilliantly well, I would say, as Der Bauer has said, that AMD's marketing has not done such a good job. And that is because the products practically sell themselves now. The original Ryzen, 1000 as we call it, they had to make a market, and the processors weren't brilliant. It was just welcome to have some competition from AMD, and that was a slightly tricky sell. Zen Plus was good. Zen 2 is excellent. It sells itself, it really does. Meanwhile, as I say, Intel stagnant, therefore, and yet the claimed clock speeds of Zen 2 processors and Threadripper 3000 are just nonsense. I have literally never seen the claimed speed from a Ryzen processor. Full stop. It hasn't happened. It's as though, I'm fairly sure this is what did happen, when the product was being developed, there were various specs floating around, and these are the numbers we might see, and they kind of got written down, and they never got changed, and I don't understand it. My Ryzen 5 3600 will run around 4 gigahertz, but it very rarely runs at 4 gigahertz. It might be something like 3.97 gigahertz. Well, if you do rounding to x decimal places, 4 gigahertz. It's certainly not more than 4 gigahertz. And the thing is, it's a good processor. It's good value. It does a good job. Call it 3.95 gigahertz all cores and have done with it. Instead of this flanneling about boost speeds and so on. It's really aggravating. You've got superb products, AMD, and yet you're mucking up that final last little bit of the marketing. By contrast, Intel's marketing people, and there's been an awful lot of mud slung at them for an awful lot of dirty tricks, that's for sure, justifiably so. Intel's marketing people have done an amazingly good job in 2019. That's the controversial part. The reason I say that, so we know about all the real world testing, we know about Ryan Shrout, and we know about the change in how benchmarks are done, and they're linking to the details of benchmarks. I've commented at least once about presentations that I've seen where we never received a copy of the deck. We saw pages, there's various footnotes, we never saw the end pages of the presentation, which actually explain what the footnotes refer to, and we never received the full presentation. I never saw those footnotes. This is new behavior from Intel. It's very nasty behavior, and I don't like it one little bit. I dislike it intensely. That's been true through 2019 and also really 2018. You could probably go back to 2017. To give an example of what I mean, at CES 2019, i.e. the start of this year as I'm talking right now, Intel at their keynote said that Ice Lake is a thing. Rumours of its death are, much overstated and so on. Charlie Demerge, a semi-accurate, sat, as I recall, down the front row of this presentation, and I think they were responding directly to his statements that 10 nanometer was just broken, and they stated categorically it's not broken. Part of the thing there being is Intel has made financial statements which are legally binding. They can lie all they like to me and to other tech journals. It doesn't matter to Intel and legally. But when they lie in financial statements, that's serious. Therefore, they cannot lie in financial statements, or at least they can't be caught out lying in financial statements. So 10 nanometer officially could not be broken, could not be dead. Well, effectively, 10 nanometer is dead. We have not seen Ice Lake processors, but you can go out today and you can buy Ice Lake. Therefore, legally, 10 nanometer is not dead. So as far as I'm concerned, Intel's 10 nanometer and Ice Lake are dead right now. They haven't happened. I was out in Israel 6 months ago now. And we were being talked about the wonders of Ice Lake. I still haven't seen it in action. However, I have seen various Ice Lake laptops on show. So, as far as I'm concerned, in a practical sense, Ice Lake is non-existent. In a legal sense, Ice Lake is fine as far as Intel's concerned. Speeds might be terrible, yields might be awful, pricing is probably just fictitious, whatever. Park that. Right now, Intel is delivering Ice Lake, and that's all that matters. And this is what I mean. As far as I'm concerned, the marketing departments have been up to hugely dirty tricks, but they've just about kept the sky up for years now. Years. So despite all the mud that's being slung at Intel's marketing people, they have perversely done a brilliant job with 0 cards in their deck. To give you another couple of examples, so we've got the thing about real-world benchmarking. So now it turns out the Cinebench is no good as a benchmark, but you can test AI features in processors. Core i9 10980XE, you want to check out those AI features. Well, that's not going to happen, is it? I mean, I understand that high-end desktop, you shouldn't necessarily be emphasizing the gaming side of things, but AI? I mean, please, that's just nonsensical. And the point is, they're moving the target. You used to major on Cinebench and Adobe Premiere and WinZip or 7-Zip and Blender, stuff like that, and now they're saying, yeah, but people don't use Blender on the desktop. What you want to test is this, and then they come up with AI. It's throwing sand in our eyes, making us think, are we doing things right, doing things wrong? And yet the underlying truth of the matter is that particularly the Core i9 10980XE, despite the fact that the price has dropped from $2,000 pounds to $1,000, and I see at the moment you can't actually buy the X299 platform chips at all. They're just not available, despite the fact the new products have got prices that are half what they used to be. They're still stupidly expensive. The X299 platform has lost all interest. That's the fact of the matter. And yet, if you look, you will see Intel's high-end desktop is apparently still a thing. Try and buy it if you want to. Good luck with that. An illustration of Intel's problems, you can look at Microsoft Surface. If you look around, you'll find reviews that are directly comparing the brand new Surface from Microsoft that is running on Intel Ice Lake, and you'll find them being compared to AMD Zen. Here's the thing, the Zen is not Zen 2, it's previous Zen, I think Zen Plus, and Intel Ice Lake wins out. Now we know that if AMD has a problem, it's the very low power chips. They can do power efficient chips and they can do performance chips, but when they want to go down to real low power at the moment, AMD is not really in that market. And in these direct comparisons, Intel wins. Ice Lake beats AMD, and that's the only headline they care about, is Intel beats AMD. And this obviously is in the same platform in the Microsoft Surface. The fact that the chips, the underlying architectures and generations aren't directly comparable, that's a mere detail. These are current Surface products you can buy from Microsoft, and that's what counts. Also, at the moment, you can buy a Surface that runs ARM, and that Surface, I'm not entirely clear who it's being aimed at, but again, surprisingly, ho, if you look for reviews where the reviewers have looked at the Surface running ARM and then they run Windows software, either it won't run or it runs very poorly because it's running through an emulator. Now, when I was out at IFA and Intel was talking about real-world benchmarking, they were talking about how poorly some software runs on ARM, and at the time I didn't understand why they were focusing on that. To me, the idea that Windows software runs poorly on on an ARM processor rather than x86 was, well, obviously. And this, of course, is the reason why they knew full well that there was a Surface that runs ARM. So once again, Intel wins. So Intel beats AMD, Intel beats ARM. The really strange thing about Microsoft Surface, and of course Microsoft's been working with Intel for decades now, they are the backbone of the PC industry, that Wintel combo, is that we saw an announcement about the new Surface, which is going to be coming out for Christmas 2020, a year away. This announcement was a month or two ago now, and it refers to Intel Lakefield. Now, Lakefield looks like a really interesting processor. It's a clever hybrid processor that uses Foveros packaging and such like. And at the moment, obviously, it's irrelevant. We're not going to see it for a year, if we see it in a year. And yet Microsoft was talking about the Surface running on Lakefield. So Intel can turn to Microsoft and say, you see, in Surface, in conjunction with our good friends Microsoft, Intel beats AMD, Intel beats ARM, Intel's got this amazing thing coming in a bit. And that's amazing marketing. I mean, it's slightly shocking marketing, but from a point of view of a company that's got infinite money, essentially, and has got no cards in its deck, I have to say, Intel marketing, wow, good work in 2019. I mean, I hate it, but good work. Where is Intel going in the future? It comes back to processes. Now, they're talking about backporting. They're talking about potentially going back beyond 40 nanometer to 22 nanometer for some chips. They're talking about using designs that were intended for 10 nanometer or 7 nanometer, using them instead of 14 nanometer or whatever. A recent presentation basically said 2019 10 nanometer. Well, maybe, kind of, but no. 2021 7 nanometer, 2023 5 nanometer. Every 2 years thereafter, 3 nanometer, 2 nanometer, 1.4 nanometer in 2029. And I looked at it and I thought, well, no. What basically is happening is the present is a disaster. The immediate future is completely unknown. The idea you can then step forward and you can say what's happening in 2029 is just a really bad joke. So I consulted with Steve Burke of Gamersnexus, using Facebook, which is, as we know, is the intellectual forum. And the response came back, alternatively, 2021, 14 nanometer. 2072, humanity is torn asunder by climate change and ApeSheep from deep space. 2073, 14 nanometer to the power of 9. And when I confirmed this with Steve, he said, ApeSheep will happen. it frankly makes as much sense as other predictions about process. The idea we can say, yes, 2025, 3 nanometer from Intel, maybe. But there's absolutely zero evidence to back that up. So right now, the company that matters most to us is TSMC. Their fabrication plants are of critical importance. I hope to goodness Intel can get their act together. I really do. TSMC, massively important. Intel's so-called roadmap at the moment is a really bad joke. It's genuinely tempting to speculate that Nvidia is going to deliver Ampere graphics quite soon and cut prices, but there's no reason to think that's going to happen. No reason whatsoever. With the RTX series, with the 10 series, they push prices forward. The 20 series, they push them forward even further. There's no reason to think that in the future Nvidia is going to do anything other than inflate prices even further, unless AMD forces them to do different. So right now I'm looking at what's coming from Nvidia. I mean, obviously the details are completely unknown to us because they keep their cards very close to their chest, and I'm just feeling disheartened. We have to hope AMD is going to do something about it, because the alternative is that Intel is going to do something about it with their Xe graphics. And we know full well in the first instance those graphics are going to the data center. They are not coming to consumers for gaming. That just isn't the case. No doubt there would be something gaming at some point, but who knows? That has to be off in the distance. So whether or not we see a consumer graphics card in 2021 or 2022, we simply don't know. Right now we've put all our chips on AMD, so to speak, hoping that they can do something to redress the balance of Nvidia. And then we come to my sort of area of review speciality, which is cases. I seem to have done an awful lot of cases in the past couple of years, and the trend has been disappointing. It seems to be all about RGB glass and sealed fronts with highly questionable airflow. These days, when you get a case that actually flows air well, it's a relief, whereas it should be just an expectation. At Computex of this year, I was talking with Gordon from PC World in the States. PC World, the website stroke magazine, you understand, rather than PC World, the store we have over here in the UK. And this is on PC World's own video on their YouTube. And Gordon was talking to me about form factors, because Asus had some motherboards where they're trying to rejig them, make them more modular. And it seems like a very interesting idea. I don't have any great hope it's actually going to come to anything, but the idea of form factor and getting away from regular ATX, where your board is this tall, your processor's there, your memory's around the area, your graphics is there and some space below it. That form factor is now just antique. We've got multiple graphics slots we simply don't need. I wish to goodness that motherboard manufacturers would ditch some of the slots, maybe move the main slot down, which obviously means the traces are longer, which might hurt communication. Free up some space. We don't need all those expansion slots, and then the design could be better. But Gordon was talking about ATX, and we were harking back to BTX, which is 20 years old, 25 years old now, and that was stillborn. And I was basically looking around for anything that might make my life better in regard of the form factor, building a PC. So apart from the obvious thing, which is cases, have some airflow, hey. When we were doing a survey of KitGuru readers, I was really surprised how many KitGuru readers still use an optical drive bay. Really surprised. So that obviously affects the front of the case significantly, takes a big chunk of space. So I'm going to say case manufacturers, if you can include an optical drive bay, it's probably a good idea. If it's detachable such you can then remove it and put more cooling in the front of the case, that would probably be a really good idea. A few manufacturers do that, but they've moved away from optical drive bays just to give you more space in the case, and then they seal it with glass, which is, what's that about? And then you get the power supply thing. Now I'm strongly tempted in 2020 to do more builds using SFX power supplies. ATX is a big form factor. Using an SFX or SFXL power supply, that seems to me to be something worth trying. Ditch the great big brick at the bottom for a much smaller brick. But the thing I really want to see is Seasonic Connect. We saw that at Computex this year. It's like a manifold for electric. So you have a dedicated power supply which has one great big cable going to the bottom of the Connect, and then the Connect runs up the back of the case, and the cables branch off as they go. It's neater, it looks more compact. You've got less cabling to wrestle around corners at the end, and more to the point, it's different. And at the moment, I want things that are different, but not different just for the sake of it. The modular Asus motherboards that we saw at Computex, I've got my doubts. I like the idea. I think it'd be hellish expensive, and I don't think it's likely to take off. But I hope I'm proven wrong about that. ATX cases, I think, are here to stay, so we're talking about tweaking things within the ATX form factor. And as I say, optical drive bays, they still have their place even today, and probably going on for the next few years. I'm surprised, but I think it's the case. So this being the way it is, we're working with the current blocks of PC components, just maybe moving them around slightly. So physically smaller power supplies, sort out the cabling to tidy things up, help us with airflow. These would be, frankly, very reasonable requests, and they'd make my life a lot better in 2020 and moving forward. So there we go. I'm going to wrap up. I'm going to say Happy Christmas. I'll be reporting like crazy from CES in less than 2 weeks' time, and then we're going to roll forward and see what 2020 has to offer us. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up, click the bell button, subscribe. I'm Leo Warder for KitGuru. This is the final Leo Says of 2019 and indeed the decade. Happy Christmas.